And CNA's Paul Kok-ing spoke to the UN's humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, who recently visited Naypyidaw and Mandalay. He began by sharing some of the unique challenges that the UN faces in rescue and relief work in Myanmar.
This is an absolutely devastating earthquake. And obviously we're scrambling hard with our international partners to get as much response in as we can and save as many lives as we can. But it's true too that this is a unique situation because it's a compound crisis. It's an earthquake on top of a long-running conflict, on top of existing very high levels of need. 20 million people in the country, that's 1 in 3, already needed our support. And of course the earthquake has just made that even worse.
Now, the UN had earlier accused the military government of preventing aid from passing through rebel territory. Is that still a problem?
So we try and get access to every part of the country. It's vital for us that we can go anywhere and get aid to anyone who needs it. And we'll work with local groups on the ground in order to do that. It's a very, very tough operating environment for us in the wake of a massive, devastating earthquake. But we have brilliant teams out here who are working flat out around the clock to support those who need it.
Has the military government laid out any conditions or restrictions on the UN's relief efforts? Or do you have unfettered access to information and the affected areas?
So anywhere we operate in the world, you have to deal with bureaucracy, you have to deal with the rules and regulations of the state that you're operating in. And here in Myanmar, it's no different. But we're used to that, and we get out there and we carry on whatever the restrictions we face.
Would you say there are more restrictions in this case?
So it's a tough operating environment for us. It has been for some time. The conflict makes it much, much harder. But, we're used to operating in tough operating contexts. And, it's our job to carry on getting out there, finding those who need support and making sure they get the support they need. To be honest, the biggest constraint to our work now is a lack of funding. And we really need the world to hear the desperate plight that the people of Myanmar are in and respond in the way that the Japanese people have responded and so many others across the region.
So you have encouraged the world to give more aid, but the fact is Myanmar is a country that's being ruled by the military that is battling several rebel armies. So while people or organizations may want to give aid, there are fears that these might not go to those in need and may instead be redirected to other purposes. Are there any safeguards in place for aid provided by the UN?
Absolutely. So we have very robust safeguards in place to make sure that all the money that we receive goes to those who so desperately need it. We have very, very robust procedures for that. And we have a donor fund, a country fund that is focused on local organizations because we have a lot of trust in partners on the ground to deliver aid in the most effective way possible and with as few layers as possible between the donor and the recipient. For us, we're driven by the need to save as many lives as possible, and we want to remove any constraints, any bureaucracy that gets in the way of that.
Now, you've been meeting some of the affected communities. What have you gathered from them, and what are some of the stories that stood out most?
So the situation is utterly desperate, and I've been in Mandalay this morning, which of course is one of the areas that was most affected by the quake, and spoken to mothers who've seen their children buried underneath the rubble of their homes, and they're living just across the road. I've been to a clinic which was completely destroyed, and the doctor managed to lie on top of his 1.5-year-old son in order to save his life. So I've seen lives completely uprooted, lives completely shattered. But I've also seen enormous resilience. I've seen communities rallying around, supporting those who've lost everything. I've seen the community groups going back towards the danger in order to help the survivors. I've seen local philanthropists, local religious organizations who are determined to get as much support as possible to those who need it. So it is a disaster of epic proportions, but there are also enormous amounts of generosity and compassion and resilience out there too.
Now, the U.S. is glaringly absent from rescue and relief efforts after Donald Trump's cuts to foreign aid. In your conversations with the locals, is this something they are taking note of? What implications will this have on America's sway and its relations with other countries?
So I'm appealing for funding from the international community, including the US. Our appeals in the past were very heavily US funded. About a third of the money that we raised from Myanmar came from Washington. And of course, we want the Americans to be here by the side of those who are suffering so badly. But we're also appealing to countries more widely. And it's notable that ASEAN countries in particular have really stepped forward in response to this crisis. As I arrived, there was a Singaporean plane on the tarmac unloading aid. I've just been to a medical center staffed by people from the Philippines. So you have the region really stepping forward and bearing a responsibility right now.
Now, you've said that you're trying to reach all affected areas, but the military government does not control all of Myanmar. And there are suggestions that aid agencies should also work with rebel groups that control other parts of the country. Is the UN working with any rebel groups on relief efforts?
So we work with local community organizations. We're focused on the civilians who need the support. But we'll go anywhere, talk to anyone to get that aid through. And that's the same story wherever we operate. I've been recently in Darfur. I've traveled up and down the length of Syria. I've been in Gaza. I've been out to the front lines of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And we'll go anywhere to get that support to the people who need it.
Now, some analysts say the quake could be a catalyst to resolve Myanmar's civil war. But past natural disasters have seen the military exert even tighter control. What's your assessment?
Well, let's wait and see. I mean, I'm here to represent the humanitarians. As a humanitarian mission, our job is to save as many lives as possible. But of course, we welcome the ceasefire. And we hope that that ceasefire can stay in place. And maybe the catastrophe that has faced the entire population of Myanmar will focus people's minds on the need for peace and the need for reconciliation. Ultimately, that will be the best guarantor of the prospects for us getting aid to those who so badly need it.